Hello, everyone. My name is Rob Higurita, and I'm the Principal Technical Account Manager at AWS, and I'm based out of Austin, Texas. Welcome to AWS Supports You, where we share best practices and troubleshooting tips from AWS Support. And joining me today is Aaron Adele from AWS Cloud Intelligence Dashboards teams. Can you give us a quick introduction, Aaron?
I'm back. Hopefully you saw me last episode. I'm Aaron Edel. I run the go-to-market for the Cloud Intelligence Dashboards teams, as you already mentioned. I just get to spend 100% of my time helping customers visualize and understand kind of key cost insights and get the tools they need to dig into their cost and usage data, and I love it.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate that. So, as Aaron mentioned, today we're going to be kind of revisiting the Cost Intelligence Dashboard framework that we covered in a previous episode, and we'll share a link to that as well in case you missed it previously. But today we're going to be specifically focusing on the various methods of how to deploy these into your AWS accounts. Before we get into the details, though, a quick note to the attendees online. Please feel free to use the chat window on the right-hand side of your screen to let us know, where you're joining us from today, and share your thoughts and questions throughout today's episode. We really do look forward to hearing from you. So, Aaron, can you go ahead and run us through what we're going to be talking about today?
No, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely want to encourage people to start typing their questions ahead of time, think about them ahead of time. We're going to take some breaks to address them, and I just want to make sure we get to them. So if you remember from last episode, we talked, and I highly recommend going and checking out that video. We talked about the Cloud Intelligence Dashboards. I gave you a sneak peek of a new dashboard that we're actually going to be deploying this week. So it's very exciting, the KPI dashboard. So definitely check that out. I am going to reiterate some of the stuff I talked about last time. So we're going to cover Cloud Financial Management as a whole a little bit. We're going to talk about how the dashboards help with that. We're going to kind of reiterate the framework of the Cloud Intelligence Dashboards. And then we're going to, what today's focus is how do I actually deploy these dashboards? I want it. How do I get it into my AWS account? And so we're going to get a little technical today, which is kind of fun. And so just make sure you've got your questions all fired up, and we're going to try to address them as well. So let's take one giant, massive leap backwards. You are an organization. You have lots of accounts perhaps running. You've got maybe multiple payer accounts. You're growing. You're building new applications. You're innovating. You're changing the world, right? And you're doing it on AWS, which is awesome. Now, a lot of times customers come to us, folks on my team, folks on enterprise support team, and really they have the question, how do I lower my bill, right? Okay, it's a good question, and there's definitely ways you can do that. The easy answer is just use AWS less, but I don't think that's the right answer because I also don't think it's the right question. The right question when you're growing on AWS, when you're moving more workloads to AWS is, how do I get more value out of AWS? So that's what I like about this graph. This is the what does good look like graph. And you're probably going to see it in a lot of different formats, at different times throughout your cloud financial management journey, which hopefully you're on. It's an exciting journey. And really the basics are, you're not going to use AWS less. So how do I actually get more value out of what I do use? And this is what it looks like when you're doing it right. Your unit costs, right? So that's what that yellow line is. Your unit costs should be trending down as you use more. Kind of some simple economics 101. But an example of your unit cost might be your compute unit cost, right? The average hourly cost of compute. What is that? Do you even know what it is, right? Do you know what it is on-prem? Do you know what it is on AWS? Maybe your average cost per gigabyte, for example, in storage in S3. These unit costs should be trending down, and that's what good looks like. So how do you get there, right? Like, can you just press a button on the console somewhere and it just figures it all out? I wish that would be definitely something really fun to think about. So this is a slide from last time. Basically, there's many different ways to get there, right? So all the way on the left, you're on premises, right? And this is where you start the journey. And sometimes this is the hardest part because your organization, the people in finance, your CFO, maybe they are still thinking about, okay, how much does it cost to buy a server? what's the cooling cost of this data center? How much do I need to pay for power and electricity? Oh, we have this workload, these workloads, so I need to buy these servers, right? This is the typical problem, right? You've got a workload that's here, and you know that it sometimes can spike, so you buy the server up here, maybe even up here, to make sure you're covering that spike. But most of the time it's empty, and you're paying for all of this stuff that you never use. So you lift and shift onto AWS, right? Now, not every customer does this, but this is kind of a typical journey that really kind of starts here on the left. Now, you are not optimized when you lift and shift because you are running monolithic applications. You're probably using the same kind of thinking, especially as it relates to cost, as you did on-prem. It's just you're hosting it in AWS. Now, there are still advantages to doing this. It's definitely better than being on-prem, but this is the beginning of the journey. So this is where you need to really start to think through, what does the next year look like? What does the next 5 years look like? How do we get to what good looks like? Now that I've told you what good looks like, you can start this journey. So what is this journey, right? Now, none of these are in order necessarily. You don't have to tackle these in this order, but this is just kind of a helpful guide, I think, to just walk you through the process, right? So right size your instances. Right off the bat, again, when we talking about that gap, right? So instead of having instances here, have instances here, right? You want to make sure you've got a little bit of playroom for spikes, but you want to right size your instances. Make sure that they are optimized for your workloads. And you're going to be able to do that if you have the Cloud Intelligence dashboards, because you'll be able to look at your workloads and their usage and their cost and their elasticity, how they peak and ebb and flow, so you can plan, right? And let's talk about elasticity. We have lots of flexible computing options, right? So there's lots of ways that you can tackle this. And I'm certainly not an expert in all the ways. I'm not an expert in a lot of the different details across these, because there's a lot here. There's a lot of services and ways you can use these to apply to your account, to your accounts. But look at Spot, look at auto scaling. You can address those spikes, those workloads, right, in the right way. When your workload spikes, spin up more resources. When it goes back down, shut those resources off, right? In order to do that, like I mentioned before, you're going to need to maybe forecast, but you're going to need to do it in an educated way. So you need to look at your past usage and your history, and you need to think through how is this going to look in the next 3 months? What is this going to look like in the next year? And it can get more complicated if you're onboarding a new workload or a new service, or you're building a new service. That's where these dashboards really help, because they are up to date within 24 hours. So you essentially have really close to real-time information about what's going on in your accounts. You can drill down, you can drill up, you can think through usage, you can think through cost, but you can use this to forecast. But you need to be able to have that visualization in the first place. Choosing the correct pricing model, right? So again, you may or may not be familiar with things like reserved instances and savings plans and Spot and all of these other pricing models. Maybe not the best word to use to describe it, but there's all these different ways to use compute, and you need to explore them. And of course, remember, this is a journey. So you're going on this journey, and as you explore them and implement them, your unit costs are going to be going down. And you notice that this graph, I have these arrows with these kind of dotted lines, these dotted outlines that are circling bits, and it says start tracking KPIs, percent on demand, percent graviton, etc. This is from my presentation where we talked about the new KPI dashboard, because you do need to track this. You need to keep track of, okay, last year we bought a reserved instance. What was the return on my investment? Was it good? Was it bad? Did I save money? Chances are you saved money. But you can actually find out through the Cloud Intelligence dashboards exactly how much you saved, who saved it, which account, which linked account, which resource, which biz unit, which cost center, which tag, which application saw what savings, where did it come from, right? Was it the savings plan you bought? Was it the reserved instances you bought? You can think about them together. You can think about them separately, but you can track it. And that's how, and you can track your unit costs. So at the end of the day, you can see that, yes, those were good ideas. Buying those RIs were good ideas, because look, our compute unit cost is going down. Now, storage optimization, same story. There's, take S3, for example. There's multiple storage classes or tiers in S3. You have Glacier, you have intelligent tiering, you have deep archive. they all have a different relationship to how they impact your cost. And as you optimize on storage, right, you pick things that are more optimized, your unit cost of storage will go down, and you can use the cost intelligence dashboard or Kudos or any of the dashboards to track your unit cost as they get impacted by these things. Then we get to get into kind of the fun stuff, right? Containers, serverless, managed services. This is where you can really, really hone things and get things real optimized. And probably, I don't want to say more importantly, but maybe equally as importantly, improve things like performance, response time, reliability. That's what kind of comes with some of these more modern services like containers, Fargate, ECS, EKS. I'm kind of grouping them together, and there's definitely a lot of detail there that I'm flying over. But the bottom line is that at the end of the day, these are really, really worth your time. Now, how do you know they're worth your time? Let's take Graviton, for example, right? So I like Graviton personally. So it's kind of one of my favorite things. It's this new architecture, a CPU, ARM-based, and it's just more energy efficient, more price efficient, more performance efficient, right? But some of your workloads are probably based on x86. So how do you think about tackling those workloads, knowing that you might need to put in some dev work, some refactoring to get them to work on Graviton? Let's take your Lambda, for example. You might have a Lambda function that you run. So first you can use the Cloud Intelligence dashboards to see how much are these Lambda functions costing me per function, per day, per hour, however you want to slice and dice it. Then you can use the new KPI dashboard to see what your potential savings would be if you moved those Lambda functions to Graviton. Now, those functions might have dependencies that are dependent on x86. But because of these dashboards, you now know what your potential savings could be, so you can now budget that work, and you can decide whether it's worth it. That's the kind of insight that the Cloud Intelligence dashboards enable, and that's the kind of insight you really need to get to what good looks like. So let's talk about the Cloud Intelligence dashboards a little bit more. And I kind of covered a lot of these use cases already. Really, how do you track your cost optimization metrics like your unit cost of compute? Where do you go to look for more opportunities to save in a single place? How do you give everyone at the org access to this information in a way that makes sense, right? So traditionally, customers could use Cost Explorer and log into IAM, into their billing console, and get access to this information. But maybe you want to expand that. Your CFO might not have an IAM role. The folks in the finance org, they might not need to know or don't know what GP3 is. So they might not know what Graviton is or what that even means. So how do you give them these insights? How do you get them to build a cost cloud center of excellence? How do you get them to build a cost-aware culture, right? How do you get everyone around a campfire? Someone's playing guitar, someone's got like a cajon or something, and you're jamming. And this time you're jamming about cost and being cost-aware. How do you get your DevOps folks to think about cost when they spin up instances to solve certain problems? The people who are doing deep R&D, maybe machine learning workloads, and they spin up a giant instance to run some inference and then kind of forget about it over the weekend. There's a lot of controls and there's a lot of answers to those questions. But I think the first step is, how do you get people together even thinking about this in the first place and aligned on some goals, aligned on some KPIs? Hey, we are 40% covered on demand right now. Let's get to 20%, right? So in the KPI dashboard, you can set that goal and track it. You can see how did you do over the last 3 months? Oh, well, we were 40%, then we went to 36%, and then we're at 33%. You can slice and dice it by linked account. You can slice and dice it by line of business, by cost center, again, by teams, getting everybody, maybe even play some games, who can get there first, who can do the most savings, and of course, keeping track of shared resources. So, the most common being, hey, we bought an RI upfront in our payer account, but it gets shared, like whoever needs it needs it. But each line of business kind of loses track, and they then can't show back or charge back appropriately because they don't know if some other line of business used the savings plan that they bought, something like that, right? These dashboards all together get you all around the same page and looking at the same information. So the Cloud Intelligence dashboards kind of address these problems. And what's really cool is that they're really easy to use. Now, they are QuickSight templates. AWS or Amazon QuickSight is a service that you can launch from your AWS console. It's a BI service, right? So, think like Tableau, but hosted in AWS. But it's very simple, very easy to use. Even I could use it, right? I logged in. I needed to build a graph that showed my RDS costs month over month, right? Because I couldn't find one. It's just easy. You click Add Visual, drop in your fields with your Y-axis and your X-axis, do some grouping, maybe some filtering, and you've got a visual that's accurate. Now, part of the reason why you can do that is because you have access to the underlying cost and usage data at a little bit higher level view than you would if you just pinged the CUR, okay, the cost and usage report. The acronym we use is CUR, C-U-R, which is also like a 16th century insult, which is kind of funny. You mangy CUR. And so if you ping the CUR directly, you might not get that information accurately. But with our queries and with the dashboards, you can rest assured that you are actually filtering at the right level. You're considering all of the right bits of data that might be kind of meshed around. So, and it's cost efficient, right? So, we have customers that run this at like $50 a month, maybe 100. Let's just round up conservatively. They spend $100, $200 a month, giving their entire organization high-level, granular, meted out access to all of the cost and usage detail and to all of this insight. So it's really cost-efficient. It runs in your account. So what I'm going to show you today is how to deploy this framework into your account. Now, there are many different dashboards. We've got these 5, and the KPI dashboard being the new dashboard that's coming out this week. And really, you're going to learn when you deploy these dashboards which ones have the pre-baked visuals that you need, and which persona it applies to. But in general, I find that the trends and the cost intelligence dashboard do really well at the finance level, at the CFO level, right? The folks who want to track the unit economics, the folks who need to generate reports on the return on the investment on savings plans and RIs, right? And which accounts saw what, and keeping track of chargebacks and building chargebacks. Those dashboards have a lot of great pre-baked visuals. The Kudos dashboard is very operational, great for your IT managers, your DevOps managers, the people who really need to look at each Lambda resource, how much they're costing, how many hours did it run, right, for example, or dive into network details, network traffic, where is it going, where is it coming from, how much is it costing, which account is seeing what, right? Very, very resource level granularity with the Kudos dashboard. And Tau, also very operational. Tau is a trusted advisor organizational view. So if you use Trusted Advisor, if you use the Trusted Advisor checks, you want to keep track of IAM key rotations. You need, you need to know where your underutilized and unutilized resources are exactly, how much they're costing you exactly, so you can go and kill them. The Tau dashboard you're going to use. KPI dashboard's right in the middle. I call this the FinOps dashboard, because if you were to draw a Venn diagram of DevOps and IT management here, and CFO and Director of Finance here, where they overlap is FinOps. How do we push the developers and the finance people into the same realm, right? And I think that's where the KPI dashboard really shines. So the Cloud Intelligence Dashboard framework starts with the CUR, the cost and usage report, or the Trusted Advisor report if you're using Tau. When you deploy the framework, it's going to build a glue crawler that's going to scrape your CUR, make it available in Athena with some lovely tables. And then we have some SQL queries that are pre-baked that sit on top of the Athena tables and create Athena views that are, a really kind of a simplified high-level view of the CUR, and does some combining of things like RIs and SPs so that you can compare apples to apples. And then the QuickSight templates sit on top. So, that's really the framework. So I'm going to show you there's actually 3 ways to deploy. I'm going to show you 2 of them. Method 1 being the manual way. I'm not going to go through that today because it takes some time. I highly recommend doing it if you're very interested in how this all works, because it literally walks you through every step of building this manually. But if you need to just deploy this in your payer account or in a governance account of some kind, Methods 2 and 3 are for you. Method 2 takes about 10, 15 minutes. Method 3, or actually it's a little bit less, about 5, 10 minutes. Method 3 takes about 15 minutes. And that's what we're going to show today. So let's get into a live demo of the prerequisites first, right? This is what you need to do before you can deploy the dashboards. And you need to do this 24 hours before you first deploy the dashboards, because it takes that long for the cur to first populate. So you're going to go to your billing console first and foremost. What we're doing right now is we're going to create the cost and usage report. So hit up your billing console, and you're going to see cost and usage report over here on the left. And you just need to create a new report. Now, I recommend giving it a name that makes sense to you, and you need to include the resource IDs. This is very important. Click next, and now you need to give it a bucket. So if you've created a bucket already for your cur, go ahead and put it in that bucket. You can create a new bucket. Make sure it's in the same region as where you plan to deploy the rest of the stack. And then just make sure that the role policies are good. And you're going to want hourly granularity. You're going to want to, give it. You're probably going to want to give it a prefix as well. But you're going to want to overwrite an existing report so that you're not just creating a bunch of data you don't need. And Amazon Athena. Click this. That's the Parquet format. It's a very, very efficient way to get this data into your bucket as well. It's probably going to ask you for a prefix. Okay, so review your settings here. There aren't too many settings, and then complete. So now what this is doing is you basically have created a cur report that is going to start generating once it's actually random every 24 hours, 3 times, but I would come back in 24 hours just to make sure it's got everything populated in there. So once you've done that, you can pick the bucket where you put this cur report in. This is again 24 hours later, and make sure you find the right bucket. So you definitely need to check this before you kind of carry on, because sometimes weird files can get in there. It hasn't happened in a long time, but this is what it's going to look like. Essentially, you're going to have some high level buckets. You're going to then see all of these buckets with, or I should say, not buckets, but folders with dates. These are dates. This is your cur. This is how the Parquet format looks. You need this file, this YAML file. You need to download it and store it locally. So you can just click download and hang on to it, right? And we're going to come back to it in a moment. And this is going to help us build our glue crawler. So let's head on over to Athena, because next we need to make sure that Athena is set up properly. All this really means is that you've logged into Athena once before, and you need to go to your workgroup settings, and you need to make sure you have a query result location. So pick a bucket, maybe call it query results, something that makes sense to you, and say, okay, this is where all of the query results are going to be stored once they're done. And you can set up Athena to do this. It will give you an error if you haven't set this up properly. So a lot of people skip that step. It's really important you don't. Okay, so hit up the CloudFormation part, and then you're going to create a new stack, and you're going to basically upload that YAML file that you just downloaded, that the cur created for you, and hopefully you've got it handy. And basically what this is going to do when you run this is it's going to go and create a glue crawler. Now give it a stack name, something that makes sense. You might want to call it cur, Cloud Intelligence Dashboards crawler, or just Cloud Intelligence Dashboards cur, something to that effect. And then so once you do that, you're going to get presented with the normal CloudFormation choices here. And then you're going to just acknowledge these settings and these changes, and then you're going to create the stack, and it's going to run in the background and create and then run that crawler. So once it runs that crawler, you'll be able to see it in Athena. Now head over to QuickSight. I've already logged in once, so it's not showing. It's the first time you log into QuickSight, it's going to present you with a welcome to QuickSight. Please sign up. Click here to sign up, and click there to basically you need to set up your S3 bucket. And you need to tell QuickSight and give it permissions to the S3 bucket where your cur file lives. So it's going to prompt you for this sort of things. Now the good news is that all of this Step-by-step process is outlined in the well-architected lab, which you're going to get a link to during this video, and it's all there. So if you missed it, or if it was confusing, or if the video was blurry or something, rest assured you're going to have this information. Let's take a look at how we deploy it. So I think that what we're going to do now is we're going to take this option 2. So this is basically this. So like I mentioned, there's 3 different ways you can deploy them. What you're looking at right now is the well-architected lab. And if you go, once you finish the prerequisites, when you go to this deployment options section, you're going to see these options. But let me actually take a break now. I promised I was going to do this earlier and I completely forgot. Let me take a break now and just see if there's any questions, because I think there's probably a lot of questions at this point. And Rob, I don't know if you want to surface some of the questions. I had a note to take a break after the slide 9 and I completely blew it, failed.
All good, Aaron. Yeah, we did have a couple questions that came in while you're going through a few of the areas there. One come in from, sorry if it's Relache is the user. And they had a question, are these dashboards linked to AWS Cost Explorer, or is it Cost Explorer or something totally different?
Yeah, so it's actually linked to the CUR, the Cost and Usage Report. And the Cost and Usage Report gets generated from an internal system that is the same system that Cost Explorer gets its information from. So they're not directly linked, but they should be showing you the same data. And it's actually a really good practice to, if you ever customize one of these dashboards, to check Cost Explorer to see if you can get the same result. That way you know that you're filtering things in the right way.
Makes sense. And then we have one other question that came in from JibJab06, kind of talking about the dashboards themselves and some of the features. Is there a way to set up alerts on some of these saving methodologies that are there, such as alert showing when to purchase? So if you mentioned a reservation and such, or how much you should purchase for a reservation?
So yes, in QuickSight, you can actually set up alerts. And I think we might even have a link to the docs, the QuickSight docs that kind of walk you through it. But the basics are pretty much, so the way that QuickSight does it is if you have certain kind of visuals, like let's say you've got a visual that shows you just one number, previous month spending, or previous month saving, or, it could be like last time an RI was purchased. It really could be anything. You can set up an alert on it.
Oh, okay.
And there's other things too, like you can do cost anomaly, or just really any anomaly detection. So you can do cost or usage anomaly detection. We have that built into the cost intelligence dashboard, so you don't need to do anything except for enable it. And then so with these alerts, you can set up an email and have it email you. It's really cool, really straightforward. Very very kind of easy to use, easy to put in place.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, and I'll post a link to that documentation here in the chat for everyone as we continue through. So I'll turn it back over to you, Aaron, for the next video here. Thanks.
Awesome. And again, apologize for not breaking earlier for the Q&A like I promised I would. So let's do this deployment. This is now you're going to, in that link you saw back here in the lab, you're going to click this link to get to this GitHub repo. In this GitHub repo, I love this. I just love this method. This method. This was recently created, and it's just so easy to use. So you need Cloud Shell, which is a thing you can do in the console, and I'll show you that. But all you need to do is run these 3 commands. So first, copy that top command there, the Python ensure git pip upgrade. Run it in Cloud Shell, right? So this is Cloud Shell, by the way. You can get to Cloud Shell by searching for Cloud Shell in your in the search bar above, or if you see kind of on the right next to the bell icon, to the left of it, there is this little like box with a greater than sign and what looks like maybe a period or something. My eyes are not young enough to see what it is exactly, but if you click it, it's going to deploy Cloud Shell right away. And Cloud Shell is awesome. So pop into Cloud Shell, run that command that you just copied from the GitHub, right? And then run this next command. So this next command is basically going to download the CLI to your Cloud Shell, okay? So you're done with that. And then you just do deploy, right? That's it. So now your CLI is running, and it's going to say, okay, which dashboard would you like to install? and you have your choice. You're going to see the KPI dashboard here as a choice. It's not in this demo, but by the time you run this, it'll be there. So let's deploy the cost intelligence dashboard. So click enter or hit enter. It's going to detect the data sets that exist. It's going to say, okay, we haven't created those yet. So let's create the new data sets. It's going to do that. It needs to know where your cur is. So you're going to tell it, okay, the cur if you go into Athena, you're going to find the database that the cur is in, and you just say that's the database where the cur is. Click it, hit enter. It's going to run. It's going to figure out everything on the back end. It's going to start creating the views. It's going to start doing the SQL queries, and then it's going to start creating the pipeline to QuickSight, and then it's going to figure out basically all of the situations you need to figure out if you were deploying this manually, like, do you have savings plans? Do you have reserved instances? Yes or no? Yes to both. No to one. No to both. You don't need to do any of that anymore. You just deploy this, and then last but not least, it's going to deploy the dashboard, and it's going to give you a lovely little link right in the printout from the command line, which you can copy and paste into your web browser, and it'll take you right to your brand new cost intelligence dashboard. So that was that. That was it, right? So it's just that easy, and that's what I really like about the command line tool. So now let's deploy the Kudos dashboard. Okay, so we deployed the cost intelligence dashboard. You should always have the Kudos and cost intelligence and KPI. You should have them all. So run deploy again, but this time you pick Kudos. And what's really cool is it's going to then discover you've already created these data sets for the cost intelligence dashboard, and these dashboards use the same data sets, which is why they're part of the Cloud Intelligence Dashboard Framework. And then it's simply going to just deploy on top of those data sets. So, and if any were missing for some reason, it would replace it as well. So it's deploying, and then again, it gives you a link to the Kudos dashboard you just deployed. You can follow that link, or just head back to QuickSight and refresh the browser, and you should see your new Kudos dashboard all nice and lovely there. So this command line tool also has another feature, which is that you can use it to update. So sometimes we release updates, and you just might want to download the latest version of a dashboard. So by the way, if you go to the GitHub, you can follow our change log to keep track of any kind of release notes or versioning that we've got. We also have in the dashboard itself, there's an About tab. If you click that, you'll get the whole change log, basically every new feature that we've added and what version you're on. So let's say it's been a long time, you want to update your dashboard to have the latest version. You just run update. That's it. It's going to find dashboards that are deployed. It's going to say, hey, we've got a new version of this dashboard, and it'll update that dashboard. Of course, we just deployed, so we don't have any dashboards to update. But that's all you need to do. So I'll take a pause there and see if there's any questions about the command line tool.
Hey, Aaron, thanks for that. No questions yet from the audience on the command line deployment of this. So audience, if you do have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat here for Aaron. Love to hear from you all, but thanks, Aaron, so far for sharing. That makes it nice and easy to get set up. So
it's good, right? The
yeah.
command line tool?
Yep, very handy. That's how I've set it up, and it's very, very simple.
Yeah, and you remember the old way we used to do it too,
yes,
right?
I do. The manual way still wasn't bad. It's just this is quicker. So.
Yeah, it's not exactly. It's not bad. I mean, I learned a ton doing it the old way, the manual way. But when we want every customer to use this, when you're in your finance org, and you might not have the resources to do the manual way. If you can run Cloud Shell, if you can follow the steps in the lab, again, I'm not a developer. I'm not even very smart, yet I'm able to deploy these. And that's really the goal, is to get everybody, no matter their comfort with AWS or the tech, to be able to get access to these insights. Yeah,
I think that's a great part of it. So
thank you. So there's one more way to deploy, and that's the CloudFormation template. And so I'm going to show that to you now. And the CloudFormation template step is here. You're going to find it again in the well-architected lab. And so you're gonna so when you expand this section, what's neat is it gives you this launch CloudFormation template link. I really like these links. We have other labs, by the way, that have CloudFormation templates too. And it's just, I find it very easy if you're logged into the console to just click this link. And when you do, it just pops open CloudFormation with everything you need, which is lovely. But in this one, there's some parameters that you need to fill out. It's really important. So first, you need to give it a name, right? You need to read this carefully. So I can't tell you, I'm guilty of this too. I think everybody does this. We skim, our brain just doesn't want to, like, it just wants to move on. But it's really important here that you read this carefully, because I can't tell you how many errors in deployment have occurred because someone missed a slash or someone missed some step, either in the prerequisites or here in the CloudFormation template step. So first and foremost, we need to incorporate or paste in here the Athena query results bucket. So you remember we set that up when we first went to Athena. We went to the work group. We picked a bucket that we wanted to be where the query results were put. So let's go back and find that. There's a couple different ways you can find it, and this is probably the least best way to do it. But if you go to S3, there's your bucket, right? There's the query results bucket. So I'm going to paste that in here. It reminds me to remove a trailing slash, so I delete it. Okay, now we need the bucket of your cur, the cur bucket folder path. So let's go back to S3. We're going to find, now this is important. So when you, sometimes, like in my case here in my demo, I've got like a couple different directories and folders going on in my cur bucket. So it's not the best, but I don't have it set up where the root of the bucket is just the cur. So I need to go in here and make sure I find the level where these dates, these folders, the dates on them, you need the bucket or the folder that contains those. That's the path you need. So this again is the worst way to do this, but if you copy this and go over here and paste it in, and of course delete the trailing slash and delete those stupid spaces that are in there that shouldn't be there. Make sure the path is a path. Then you're good there. Now the cur database name. Now remember, we needed this in the part of the step where we were deploying in the command line tool. We also had, you probably missed it, maybe you didn't miss it, but there was a list of databases in Athena where we had to pick from. Now, some customers may not have used Athena or anything like that before, and they've only got one database, and that's where the cur is. But just be careful you're picking the one with the actual cur in it. Some customers who have deployed the cur in the past might have multiple databases with multiple curs. If you're ever confused about which is which, you can go back to Glue in the Glue console and look at the tables and the databases there, and just find the one that you deployed most recently. That's the cur that you want for this situation. Then you know which one it is. So the database is here, and I know that it's Isengard Cost Master in this case. So I'm just gonna free type that in. Again, there's better ways to copy and paste things, and leave that there. So now I need the table. Now, the table is going to be what Glue created, is actually your cur here. So in my case, it's called this account cur. Yours might be called something else. I think it's going to default to customer_all. So that's the table that you're going to want to put in here. And then your QuickSight refresh schedule, I recommend leaving this alone. Basically, this is going to just refresh your QuickSight data sets overnight, once a day. Now, remember, we talked about how when you create the cur, it kind of dumps itself out kind of 3 times, I think, randomly throughout a 24-hour period. So if you wait 24 hours, I think you're guaranteed to get the correct amount of data for the prior day. So I recommend leaving this as default. You can always adjust this if you want it less frequently. You can do it more frequently. Your QuickSight data sets refresh, your Glue crawler refreshes, and the cur refreshes. So there's this kind of step-by-step refreshing cycle that you just, as long as it's all set up roughly around the same time, and that your QuickSight data sets are not refreshing before your Glue crawler runs, you should be okay. So I leave this as default traditionally. Okay, your QuickSight user. Head over to QuickSight. On the top right, you're gonna find the sort of user panel over there. So you click on that. Your username is going to be this top thing. You can click it and just copy it if you want and paste it here, right? So that's your QuickSight user. Make sure your region makes sense. I've actually deployed mine in US West. If you're not sure, you can actually go back to QuickSight where your dashboards are, and in the URL, you'll see the region. So mine's in US West 2, most default to US East. So you might not play with that. That's it. So we're gonna, acknowledge our changes here and create this stack, and the stack's gonna run. Now this stack takes about 15, 20 minutes to complete. So you're gonna give it some time, and of course you can dive deep in there and see what's going on if you're curious. But when you're done, you click on dashboards, and you're gonna have all of your dashboards already deployed, and you can click on them and access them and start the cloud financial management journey that we were all talking about ahead of time. So really, I think the key here is the well-architected lab. You need to go to the well-architected lab and check out how each of these steps gets completed. And if you're sort of very curious about how, even if you don't want to do it manually, but you want to know what's going on behind the scenes, what are the SQL queries? What does the glue crawler look like? You can go on the manual deployment here. And if you click here to continue with the manual deployment, it'll drop down and just give you step-by-step instructions on how to do this manually. When you do it manually, what I liked about doing it manually, among other things, was I learned how to join data in QuickSight. Now, if you're not familiar with how data sets or databases work, when you join data, it's just as it sounds. You're basically taking one set of data and another set of data, and they have something that relates, like maybe a date or an account ID or something, and you're joining them and you're combining them. And obviously there's a whole world of joins in SQL and other database methodologies that are important that I'm definitely skipping over. But what I learned about that in QuickSight is that it's really easy to join data in QuickSight, and that opens up a whole world. I mean, a whole world of possibilities, because this whole deployment is based on the CUR, or in the case of Tau, based on your trusted advisor organizational reporting data. But there's other data sources, aren't there? There's your compute optimizer data. There's AWS budgets. There's your EC2 inventory report. There's AWS organizations. We actually have a lab. It's a 300 level lab that you'll find in this same well-architected labs website that walks you through deploying. And it's CloudFormation templates. Click, set some parameters, click deploy. What it's going to do is automate pulling a lot of this other data into an S3 bucket and basically creating a data lake that you can then combine with your data that's present in the cost and cloud intelligence dashboards. So get familiar with how you can join data in QuickSight, because it's actually a very, very, very powerful tool. Now, it can be as simple as, I want to upload my cost center, right? So pretty common use case with customers is that they've got a cost center and they have these 5 linked accounts are associated with this cost center. So if you can put it in a spreadsheet, one column is linked account ID, one column is cost center, then you can join it in QuickSight. Now, the best way is to pop it into S3, have Glue crawl it, create a table in Athena, pull that table into QuickSight. You can also just upload CSV files directly into QuickSight. And you basically, all you would do is a left join on linked account ID. So you're combining the linked account ID in the one file with your cost center data and the one that's already there for the dashboards. And then it just will add your cost center as a new column. And that means in your dashboards, you have a new field, cost center. And you can group all your visuals by cost center. You can see your cost by cost center, your usage by cost center, your RI and SP and spot savings by cost center. Very, very powerful to be able to learn how to do that. I think what's really, really important is kind of it's kind of reiterate what maybe you missed at the beginning if you just joined us, is that the cloud intelligence dashboards can be deployed at the very top level across multiple payer accounts. It can also be focused and filtered and sliced and diced by any subgroup therein that you want, basically. And not just the data itself, but the access to the data. QuickSight has a feature called row-level security, where you can essentially assign rows of data based on assigning perhaps a linked account ID to a username. You can embed the dashboards in an application. You can even put in parameters in a URL to the embedded dashboard. So if you wanted to say, you have another console where you've got, cost center A, and somebody clicks that, it opens up a pre-filtered version of the dashboard to cost center A, as an example. So there's so many different ways that you can make this work in your organization and scale it. Okay, so Rob, I think I've kind of reached the end of the live demo. We've got maybe 15 minutes or so left. Did any questions come in while I was waxing poetic?
Hey, Aaron, thanks. Yeah, we did have one question that came in here. Kind of mentioned a little bit. We'll kind of elaborate a little bit more on it from Ivachir and Neil. It says, we're not a big org and it looks good to set this up. What's the standard cost involved with the setup? So I know you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but
Sure.
Wanted to take a second to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the good news is I think the least you could spend on it is probably $30 a month. I mean, the minimum you need is a QuickSight enterprise license, which is $24 a month. I think with customers that are, large, basically, so the way that you figure it out is essentially how much do you use AWS, how much do you spend on AWS, because those are usually combined. And like we talked about, they should be decoupled, but they're not always. But as a rough guide, if you're spending $1 million a month on AWS, that kind of gives you the size, a feel for the size of the curve. Now the curve can get very large; it can get to billions of lines long every month. The good news is that even in those very, very, very large scenarios, you're really only paying for the Athena, the Glue, the S3. That's like doing the work behind the scenes. And I've never really seen that be more than like $10-20 a month. So what you are paying for at that point, then it's just the QuickSight licenses. If you got, 3 users, an enterprise license and 2 readers, that's $35 a month for the QuickSight part. So it can be very, very cost efficient for small organizations. Very, very, the dashboards are essentially free. You're really just paying for the stuff that powers it.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, and I think it's important, like even at a smaller size organization, it still provides value and input, especially as you're a smaller organization wanting to grow, right? Keep track of that spend really in depth so you can track some of that info. So
yeah,
it's low cost solution. So that was the last question that we had today. So actually, we just had another question came in, so I'm going to go ahead and ask that one too from C. Clossy. It looks like in a multi-account environment running control tower and AWS organizations, would you deploy the CloudFormation template in the master account or the main account for the organization?
Yeah, so the best practice is to actually create a dedicated linked account for this whole stack. So the reason is, there's many reasons. One of them is if you have multiple payers, the best way, you could pick one payer, and like replicate to that payer, but it's best to say, okay, let's say you have 2 payer accounts. Both those payer accounts will export a cur file, and they have to be, the cur has to dump into a local S3 bucket to those 2 payer accounts. But then you set up a S3 replication on those 2 buckets to a third account, and basically combine them into one bucket. And then you build your cloud intelligence dashboard stack on top of that third account. And then you've got multi-payer view, you can see everything. And now maybe you lose one of these payer accounts because you sold the company, or I don't know, for some reason it's good. A meteor hits, I don't know. There's a reason. Or actually probably better, more realistic scenario is you add a third. You acquire a startup that has their own payer account. Then you can just replicate it to that bucket. You don't even have to do anything. It'll just start showing up in the Cloud Intelligence dashboard, because Glue will know, hey, there's a new cur file. Let's add it to the table. And then the rest is just automated. So for C. Klaus's question, I think that probably the best practice is to put it into its own like governance account.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't do it in a pair account. I just think the best practice is to do it in a governance account.
No, I agree. I think it makes the most sense to put it in an account where you can just kind of focus effort on just, that infrastructure and for monitoring spend. Typically we make recommendations as far as organizations, whatever you have for your main payer account should be infrastructureless, right? It's just kind of for your payer construct and that's it. And so it does make sense for us to put it into that separate account.
Yeah,
to
because
track for.
there's security reasons. There's all sorts of other reasons that you don't want necessarily everyone pinging the payer account for.
Yep.
Not to mention separation of cost. Sometimes customers, they want the payer account to be a payer account and not a usage account of any kind.
Right.
So yeah, lots of different reasons. And you can, the good news is that you can kind of keep track of this all with organizations, and the dashboard makes use of organizations' data. So, you won't lose like your account names or anything like that. And then if you don't like it, if we screw up, we didn't do a good job or something, then you can kill it, shut down the account, right? So it becomes an easy, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? It costs very little to get in the door. And then if for some reason it's just not working or you want to do something else, just close the door. But I want to harp, if it's okay, Rob, on something on the last question, because I was thinking through it. And, I come from startups. I had a machine learning startup that I sold a couple of years ago. I've had a couple other startups that had used AWS. And in almost every case, we ran into what I call AWS build day, right? So you're a startup, you're having a great time, you're building cool stuff, you're spinning up instances, you're running machine learning inference and processing data, and nobody's thinking about it, right? Because it's a startup, you got to deliver. And then you get that one build that you weren't expecting. And then suddenly everyone's freaking out and it's like, why were we not, what's going on? I can't, if you deploy, the best scenario in the world is if you deploy these dashboards the first day you start using AWS, because if you start that journey early, it's kind of like when you refinance your mortgage. Like maybe your monthly payments go down by a little bit, but over the course of 30 years, it adds up. The savings adds up. If you start that journey early, if you deploy the dashboards on day one, and you don't ever have AWS build day, I mean, think of all the savings and think of how easy it's going to be to transition into IPO, when you need to start publicly disclosing and really properly managing your finances. Being able to just make your lives easier in the future by taking 15 minutes to run the CloudFormation template or the CLI tool, So I'm a strong proponent of that. I think, I love that somebody asked that question because personally, I get to do this all day. I've talked to over 1,000 customers, large and small. And, oftentimes the startup mantra is, we just need to win. We need to get customers. We don't need to think about spend and cost right now. Okay. Fair warning.
Cost visibility is really important, right? It's kind of a nice way to be able to track it early on, helps you to make sure that you keep kind of build that into the culture overall, right? So you do kind of avoid the long path of, an organization not kind of discarding the visibility and importance of things like the cost intelligence, dashboards for visibility to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate all the content and information you shared. And for everyone today, we looked kind of, at the cost intelligence dashboards and a few different methodologies on how you can deploy those into your AWS account. So if there are any questions that we didn't answer today, you can post your questions to repost.aws. And feel free to email us any feedback to AWS Supports You at Amazon.com. We want to hear from you, so tell us what else you'd like to see on the show. And as Aaron mentioned a little bit, one of the cost savings items you can talk or look into is moving your RDS databases into Graviton 2. And next week, if you join us, we're actually going to have a discussion specifically about how to move databases to Graviton 2. So for now, thanks everyone for joining us at AWS Supports You, and happy cloud computing.